Hello, Runnels Christian Church and friends. I am Pastor Katie Russell Hainline. This is a meditation for Sunday, May 10th, 2020. The scripture reading of the day is from the Gospel of Mark, the 9th chapter, verses 14 through 27. I'll read from the NRSV translation of the Bible, and I offer this scripture to you today because it is one of my favorite gospel stories. The scripture says, "When they came to the disciples, they saw a great crowd around them and some scribes arguing with them. When the whole crowd saw him, they were immediately overcome with awe and they ran forward to greet him. He asked them, 'What are you arguing about with them?' Someone from the crowd answered him, 'Teacher, I brought you my son. He has a spirit that makes him unable to speak, and whenever it seizes him, it dashes him down, and he foams and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. And I asked your disciples to cast it out, but they could not do so.' He answered them, 'You faithless generation, how much longer must I be among you? How much longer must I put up with you? Bring him to me.' And they brought the boy to him. When the spirit saw him, immediately it threw the boy into convulsions, and he fell on the ground and rolled about, foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the father, 'How long has this been happening to him?' And he said, 'From childhood. It has often cast him into the fire and into the water to destroy him, but if you are able to do anything, have pity on us and help us.' Jesus said to him, 'If you are able, all things can be done for one who believes.' And immediately the father of the child cried out, 'I believe, help my unbelief.' When Jesus saw that a crowd came running together, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, 'You spirit that keeps this boy from speaking and hearing, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again.' After crying out and convulsing him terribly, it came out, and the boy was like a corpse, so that most of them said, 'He is dead.' But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he was able to stand." Last fall at Runnels Christian Church, we had a sermon series called "The Bible Doesn't Say That." And for 6 weeks, we examined some popular cliches that seem faith-based, but when we examine them more closely, don't actually reflect our beliefs. Things like, everything happens for a reason, and God won't give you more than you can handle. Now, I understand where these sayings come from. Often we turn to them when we don't know what else to say, when pain and suffering is overwhelming and there aren't answers to our questions or solutions to our problems. And moments of social crisis, like the global pandemic we're experiencing right now, these are perfect opportunities for these sayings to leave our lips. I've seen signs of them everywhere recently. For instance, if we say everything happens for a reason, then there must be a reason for why this is happening. And some people think that maybe the reason this happens is to help us reevaluate our priorities. Or if we say, God won't give you more than you can handle, then surely this is just a big test of our faith. But I want you to think about that. Do you really believe that? I mean, a God who would send a super virus to Earth, killing thousands of people, just to make me appreciate having dinner at home with my husband 7 nights a week? Well, that is a far, far cry from the God of love and healing, justice and mercy that I know from the scriptures. This doesn't reflect my beliefs, so I try to avoid saying such things. But then the question becomes, what takes their place? What is it that I cling to when the going gets tough? Or what can I say when I don't know what else to say? The story we read from the Gospel of Mark today is one of my favorite gospel stories. It never appears in the lectionary, so I don't think I've ever preached it before. Maybe you've never even heard it before, but I love it. I always thought that I loved it because it leaves room for doubt. And if you know me in real life, you know I am a big advocate of doubt. I don't think asking questions or admitting when our faith wavers is a sign of weakness. I actually think it's a sign of searching, hungering, active faith, the kind of faith God desires in us. The father in this gospel story isn't 100% sold on Jesus quite yet. He says, "If you are able to do anything, have pity on us and help us." And Jesus hears that if. Jesus hears this man's doubt, and he heals his child anyway. The father's hesitation doesn't keep him from accessing the love and mercy of God. In fact, it invites God in. His doubt leads him closer to Jesus. And I love that about this story. But I've also discovered that another reason I love this story is that the father's confession, "I believe, help my unbelief," that's one of the most honest and faithful and biblically accurate responses we can make to the hard things in life. This man's child is sick, near death, and he's out of solutions. All he can say is, "I believe, help my unbelief." Two opposing things. Right now, our world is facing a crisis unlike any in our lifetime. We know that the longer we stay home, we reduce the risk that people will lose their lives. We also know that the longer we stay home, we increase the risk that more people will lose their livelihoods. We want safe working conditions for meat packers. We also want farmers to be able to sell their livestock. We want our children in school. We also want them to be safe and healthy. In this new world, we find opposing things are both true. Isn't this statement of opposing things the most faithful thing we can utter in such times? I believe, and also help my unbelief. There is a famous Christian theologian named Julian of Norwich who lived in England in the 1300s. Her book, Revelations of Divine Love, contains the quote, "All shall be well, all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well." Now, taken out of context, this quote can seem like yet another religious cliche, kind of like saying, "Everything works out in the end." But really, Mother Julian's message was something deeper than that. Her writings say God spoke these words to her when she was questioning why sin and suffering existed in the world. And since she lived during the time when the bubonic plague was wiping out much of England, I can't help but wonder if her question didn't emerge from the same kind of crisis we're experiencing today. Wouldn't it have been better if God had just kept the plague, or the coronavirus, or that poor child's sickness from happening in the first place? When Julian raises this question in prayer, the response she receives is not really an answer. God doesn't tell her these things happen for a divine reason. God only offers a quiet promise. All shall be well. When things were really not going well, I imagine Mother Julian lifting up the hurt, the sickness, and suffering in her world and repeating this phrase to herself, "All shall be well, all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well." Not a religious cliche, but a mantra of hope, a small, solid rock for her to stand on in the midst of sinking sand. When his child was sick, the man in Mark's gospel didn't offer a cliche explanation for his child's suffering. All he could do was make an honest admission that his faith was interspersed with doubt. I believe. Help my unbelief. What is it that you turn to when your world feels uncertain or your faith feels unstable? Is there a Bible story like this one that you relate to? Or maybe a message you received in prayer, like Mother Julian, something that you can repeat to yourself? These days, I'm trying more than ever to resist the temptation to utter cliches or share Facebook posts that fall apart when I think about them more closely. Instead, I just try to be honest and say, coronavirus is making me wrestle with faith and doubt. Mother Julian and this father from Mark's gospel reassure me that I'm not alone on this journey. And so it is their words that I cling to right now. All shall be well. All shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. I believe this, but God, help my unbelief. Amen.